dun 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 dun. Well, this is Hollywood Scammer Hat, where the Tinseltown Bracks be at. The difference between New York and this scene is the robbers smile and fiend. Snakes in the grass, trying to slither fast. Lucky me, this shite is in the past. Welcome to my story time. I am not going to call this person by his actual name. One of his ingratiating methods was to kind of mirror me and try to make it seem like we had so much in common. One of his parents was also from Louisiana, that he was, such a kind of like smart, bookish, nerdy, computery kind of person. But in the end, we had less in common than he made it seem. So, like most stories, these things happen in little snippets, little episodes, little things that kind of are remarkable, noticeable, but don't quite sit right, if you get my meaning. One of the, I guess, first questions I had in, the last year during which I saw him in person in 2019 was like, why, and let's just call him, for the sake of this discussion, Cousin Juble Pink. That'll be his name, because he wanted to be a play cousin. Juble, because he was very jubilant, like every day was a jubilee. And Pink, because that's basically what he ended up making his life all about. So he would have, like dollar store Halloween decorations up all year. Like those little plastic, what do you call the markers that you put on people's graves? Headstones that say R.I.P. in little cartoonish letters. Candy bowls with those little plastic spiders and, the pumpkin head, and just, it's odd in a man over 30 that you would have that in your house, these sort of like cheap toys all the time, but I didn't understand what those symbolized and where they came from, but we'll get to that. The other thing that was unusual about him as a black man was, say, brother, why do all of your clothes look like they belong to your little sister? He was 6'1" or 2. All his shirts would kind of end at his belly button. There'd be a gap between the top of his very tight, skinny jeans. Doesn't matter what year it was. I've known him for over 10 years. Always the skinny, tight jeans that looked so tight it didn't look like he could bend his legs. The sweatshirts were extra medium. The t-shirts were a real young fit. Like, whose clothes are these? And why would you buy clothes that are basically too small? But, all of this was just sort of curious, and I didn't really think it meant anything. I would encounter him, and he was very soft-spoken. He was very, almost a quiet talker. You could barely hear what he had to say, but he kind of talked very, very, smart, very bookish, very, I think he is a sort of black person that prided himself on being himself and not black or African American in a way that is, BET or Tyler Perry movie or Wayans brother, any of their work, no jive talk, no, just extra correct diction, extra regular language, no, AAVE, is that what it is? African American Vernacular something, but none of that, like he would just always be very alarmed and raise an eyebrow if I ever said anything that wasn't, kind of like the king or the queen's English. I think that, let's talk about Thanksgiving 2019. I had been kind of sharing living space with him, and seeing these Halloween I've been sharing living space with him. I've been seeing these Halloween decorations and Halloween candies and Halloween symbolism, and the tight clothes. I had known him since years before, where he had lived in a luxury building near the W, and had beautiful furnishings, beautiful copper, mugs and dishes, and was spending, by his own admission, about $17,000 a year on retail clothing, fast fashion and above, Zara and above, but that's a big number. He's paying over $2,000 a month for rent in that place, but no car. How do you live in Hollywood and not drive? This was always a question mark when it came to him. Plenty of money for taxis, Uber, Lyft, people, TaskRabbit, apps and people to drive him and get him around, all those little motorized scooters and all of that, and that was fine. He was making 5-6 figures a year, doing motion graphics and editing for videos and film promotion and marketing, this very highfalutin kind of work. I'd gone with him on occasion to like work functions and all of that, whether it's Trailer Park or Phase 4 or, some of these like high-end graphic and editing companies. He was in business with them. He was saying that he was creating apps and all of this, and everything seemed quite fine until Thanksgiving of 2019, and I happened to be out and about the day after Thanksgiving, which is a huge shopping day. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I ran into him on Hollywood Boulevard at about McCadden. If you know where one of the Scientology buildings is right about there. But, he was walking around in tight black trousers, and I mean, stovepipe skinny trousers, expensive pointy shoes, and a brocade kind of tuxedo jacket. And what was curious is that I saw him, and he strained himself and kind of danced around to try to avoid me kind of seeing that he saw me too. But I had seen him and, was kind of waiting for the light, and I was like, after this, I'm just going to say, hey, what's up? And when I did, I looked at this man, and I could see that he not only had a face full of makeup, he had covered his shaved African-American head with makeup. So everything from collar to the back of his collar was covered in makeup, including his ears, right? Certain kinds of makeup sits on the skin, doesn't kind of marry with the skin, especially if you've been out all night and your makeup is oxidized or whatever. So it was very obvious that he was wearing makeup, all dressed up. It was clear that he'd been out all night. And on top of it, in the bright sunlight, you could see that he had like abrasion scars on his head and on his face. Now, what do people of means do to get those kinds of scars and abrasions on their face and head? Question mark. Why would someone, Thanksgiving is a family holiday, and if you're not with family, you have Friendsgiving, but obviously he had been out all night and was wearing last night's clothes. Curious, I said something to him, pleasant, and kept it moving, but that was one of the bigger things that made me kind of question, what's this dude doing? The next thing was that, he was staying with me on one occasion, and, over several days, I came by in the middle of the day and, went to see if, like, there was space in a certain closet. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Uh-oh. That's nothing. I better take a better look. Had some trouble in here. I hope it's just gravity or something. But anyway. In any case, sorry we're live. I had a insect problem recently. We'll keep an eye on that. But in any case, so I came home. Sorry, I came by like 2, 3 in the afternoon, opened up the closet, and he was in the closet sleeping. Now this is a man who had been complaining of headaches and, you know, having so much work to do. Like, he would have a couple of iMacs and laptops and all these things. He was a computer whiz. He could fix things, broken screen, anything that the Genius Bar could tell you they couldn't fix it, he could fix it, you know. But why was it the middle of the day, someone who makes, you know, 6 figures a year, sleeping in a closet in the middle of the day is a little unusual. Pair that with all the Halloween accoutrement and the staying out all night all dressed up. It was another occasion I kind of swung by at like 7 a.m. on it was either like a Friday or a Sunday morning, something, 7 a.m. And, you know, I was tinkering around with the plants or something, and in he walks with some, you know, Zoftig European woman with, you know, lipstick from the night before worn out, so you could see that there was lipstick around the mouth but not in the middle of the mouth, and the eyeliner had migrated and all of that. And they were kind of traipsing in, and he introduced me to her as his best friend, which is flattering. But even then I didn't think I knew him that well, and I certainly didn't consider him my best friend. We were friends, I thought, but, you know, long story short, you know, he ended up sleeping with that woman in my bed and leaving, like, shall we say, body fluid stains everywhere, not washing the sheets, and then just dumping the, how can I say this for a family audience, prophylactic, full, used into the trash can. It was a decorative trash can, and, you know, I discovered that months later, horrifyingly. But, you know, like, so this person was living a lifestyle that didn't really seem to match with being a full-time worker. Sleeping in the middle of the day, staying out all night, all dressed up, with people who were not professionals, let's say. And it was odd to me, you know, because he had taken me to, like, parties at his places of business, and he seemed to be doing well, but it was maybe a span of like 6 months from him doing well and kind of being, I would think, at the top of his game, to this going out, going to the ArcLight, going to bars, going to various bars, going to the Star Wars bar, going to you know, all these different places that I don't go. I have to go to work. I can't be hanging out all night and spending all kinds of money, but this was his lifestyle, and it went from working and going out to working freelance because he didn't like that job, when in reality he had been fired because he couldn't make it to that job on time, to just not being able to tell the truth, pay his bills. You know, there was paraphernalia. Let me just be clear with you. Little tiny short straws about this long, cocktail straws, white straws that were kind of cropping up. And I was confused, to say the least, but my friend Ashley Shine was producing and directing a, I guess, a sitcom dramedy about LGBT romances at the time, and I had a speaking role in that. And I remember being on set and asking some cast members who had a past, you know, sort of a street life past, what these short straws meant, and they were very clear with me that that meant powdered illegal drug use. And I was shocked. But, you know, I didn't want my concern to be a confrontation. You know, at this point, my cousin Juble Pink decided to tell me that he was going to go to Las Vegas and work for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And my, film coworkers also told me that was a lie because his Facebook was then stock photos of Las Vegas. If you were in Vegas, you'd be in the pictures. You'd take a picture out a window of a vehicle. You would take a picture at a hotel of you. It wouldn't be just like stock photo of skyline of Vegas. Do you know what I'm saying? And it stayed like that for like a good 1 or 2 years. So do you see what I'm saying? Like, here's one version of this person at this point in time. Then there's a different version evolving where this person's becoming less about their work and their profession, more about hanging out and headaches and short straws and lying about things. And then there's all this paraphernalia about Halloween all year long. What does this mean? Well, it turns out where I ran into him on Thanksgiving was very close to this private club that Cousin Juble Pink had talked about over the years. This Cloak and Dagger club, where it was a private club, it's members only, you can only go with members. He had alluded to the fact that there were like famous people there and people that, if it wasn't burlesque and it wasn't stripping, what he said was that there were like live sex shows. And I also think that he was going to some different establishments, again, not just the that cantina that's like Star Wars, and there's something called Bar Sinister, I don't know what that is, there's something called Beetle House, but the one that he was very proud of, and he would kind of like mention it like name dropping, like almost a whisper. He was a soft spoken guy, and he would just talk about, I went to Cloak and Dagger, and this gossip about this director, and gossip about that actor, and gossip about that filmmaker, and that person, and this DJ, and all of that. And it was all super, super hip, and super exclusive, and super high end, and you had to pay for the membership, and you had to vow to secrecy. And I thought like he was trying to entice me about the situation, but Cousin Juble Pink had also tried to entice me about some other situations he was involved with, some sort of high end, I guess it was like a Eyes Wide Shut kind of scene, maybe around San Diego. He was about 30, just under, and then just over 30, had been married, I believe, to a woman, had a best friend in Mexico, owned a house with this best friend in Mexico, but had been involved in this kind of millionaire and above, what do you call it? I guess it's like a swingers scene or swingers club or something out of the ordinary that I wouldn't be involved in. But, maybe I'm just naive. Anyway, I figured out that this Cloak and Dagger place was the kind of nexus of all this behavior, all this out all night, spending all this money, being a member at the ArcLight and buying drinks for people, all this like insider information about this filmmaker director who had sexually harassed all these people, and then this actor who had sexually harassed all these people, and then this person who got into trouble this way. And he would also talk about being goth and the goth scene and not being an adolescent. I don't really know what eyeliner and black clothes has to do with adult life, but the Halloween decorations, the tight clothes, the black clothes, the expensive clothes, the bar tabs, the hanging out all night, the short straws, the implied drug use, according to my friends, the, sex partners, sex clubs, sex performance that's not unusual in Los Angeles, but all of it taken together, especially in association with, these scenes that kind of are a cohesive scene. It's at once the locus of social climbing, like you can meet a lot of accomplished people who do great things, but then you also are paying in the coin of that realm. They're doing drugs, you're doing drugs. If they're drinking, you're drinking. If they're engaging in certain kinds of sex with sexually available people, then you are too, of whatever stripe, whether it's group, solo, women, white women, non-consensual, whatever it is, you're on that scene, you're there with them, and that was great. I think that was something that made hay for him, that maybe that was one way in which he got his, gigs, his full-time jobs with fancy building and gym memberships and great catered parties, but then also got his freelance gigs when he wanted to work a different way and be at home, or nurse these headaches from being out all night and using short straws. He could be someone who had migraine headaches, but 10 years ago he didn't complain about that. 10 years ago he didn't have the out all night habits, and I think that taken together, it's like he was projecting this image still, while behind it was this hidden image that was about all night, roommates that were cocaine dealers, friends who were, and not just a couple of friends, I mean a lot of friends who were avowed Satanists, whatever that means, right? If you've watched Strange Angel on CBS All Access, if you're familiar with the work of Aleister Crowley, then that can tell you what, it's kind of a libertine. It may not necessarily be about a Satan character like that comes around and walks around and does whatever, but it's people who ascribe to this lifestyle where they do whatever they want. Do what thou wilt. And there are a lot of people in the creative professions, even Jack Parsons, who started Jet Propulsion Laboratories, dabbled in those kinds of scenes. So that's there for you if you want it to be, but the aftermath of all this like insider status and insider knowledge and being on the scene when folks like Thomas Middleditch got in trouble for acting up at this Cloak and Dagger club. Max Landis got in trouble for his antics, being less than kind, shall we say, to women and partners, and he was apparently on the scene. I just think back along the whole expanse of my friendship with Cousin Juble Pink. There was a point at which he said that he wanted to have a baby with me, and this was after we had ramen once, and he was like, "Oh, I think Asian women, meaning Chinese and Japanese, etc., I think they're the perfect woman." Or I think Eva Green from the James Bond series, who plays Vesper, is the perfect woman. He had been married before, he was social friends with RuPaul and other folks from Drag Race. All of those things said to me that he wasn't interested in me that way, but all of a sudden he wanted to have a baby. I mean, I don't think that was romantic as much as it was another manipulation, right? Like, a lot of people have babies as an anchor. You always have a place to stay, you always have someone who will be sympathetic and want you to spend time with the child. I didn't think he preferred me, my gender expression, from all the things that I've seen over the years and talked to about with him. I mean, the white women, kind of, when he would walk down the street with me, like, dudes' heads would swivel because the fit, the cheekbones, he just styled himself like he was a big, giant, walking sex organ. And I think that a lot of his social climbing, a good-looking guy, I believe he had like hazel eyes, he was, his facial hair and eyebrows were the only hair that would be on his head, but it would grow in kind of this sandy blonde. If you know Kendrick Sampson, similar coloring, not green eyes, but similar kind of like caramel, kind of golden tones as a black man. A smart guy, good looking guy, but a guy who was, I believe, turned out by the access that he got from being in this, kind of Hollywood scene that was quite cult-like. If you see the articles that I'll refer to in this video when I post it to my channel, there were people who said that the people who ran it wanted it to be a cult. They wanted to have this like group think and this loyalty, and for you to pay your money and to be brainwashed into thinking this is how it had to be. A bunch of folks ended up getting on a Zoom call in late 2020 to complain about the treatment of women, harassment, assault, etc. And then black people got on that call to say that there was quite racist or racialized poor treatment that happened in the context of this club. But still in all, they weren't leaving that club. They were wanting to, quote, make it better, right? Similar to folks who've been at different improv schools where there were, racist or, differential treatment for diverse people. They didn't want to leave. They just wanted to try to have a conversation and make it better. But, I mean, the money that was farmed out of the whole situation over the years, that's what you really have to pay attention to, because it made a few folks very comfortable and happy. The celebrities that got to be members as a kind of draw, that was the flame to which all the Hollywood moths would flock, they got to go and get away with a lot of shite. And then folks like my friend went and hung around and made connections and did what they did or saw what they saw and sniffed what they sniffed and drank what they drank and shtooked who they shtooked. And, we're kind of like in this community, but then in the end, when you're running with Satanists, coke dealers, all these people who are, kind of not trying to live a careful, legal, or moral life, they're just trying to break rules and push boundaries, you can get yourself into trouble. And the slippery slope of casual drinker, casual user, to daily drinker, daily user, to somebody who can't get up and go to work, somebody who cannot function in the normal world or have normal relationships, someone who can't tell the truth about what they do, why they have a headache, why they're wearing makeup, why they're up all night, why they're out all night, why are you hanging out with these people, why are there all these crimes being committed, and ooh, it's a secret, and there you are, right? At this point in time, he says that he hates everybody. Where are all these friends? Where are all these Satanist friends? Where are all these, people that you seduce and have sex with in my bed and leave cum stains everywhere? Where are all these orgy friends? Where are all these, people who gave you meth and gave you coke or, Jack and Coke or champagne or whatever it was? But, it just has become a situation where, he blocked me on Messenger. He blocked me on Facebook. He doesn't respond to my texts. He has kind of virtually disappeared, but I, see his pay stubs and other mail coming, so I know he's working and he's out there and he's alive. But at this point, it's like, you're running with Satanists. You've become quite in a desperate situation. At this point, do I have to draw a pentagram on the ground to communicate with him because he's so far gone into this strange scene, right? Is he living in the trap house? Is he, working his contacts from the orgy scene, from the Cloak and Dagger scene? Cloak and Dagger was closed down, but, at one point, Cousin Juble Pink was telling me that he wanted to go live in the valley in a house with the Satanists, and somehow that never quite worked out. And some of the Satanists are bodybuilders, and some of the Satanists are into things that he's into. I mean, I think that when you're a black man in genteel, moneyed society, right, there's an emphasis on whether you're someone who dresses better than the white people or smiles more than the white people. You're funnier than them. You are more sexual than them. That's your in. In my friend's case, he was also kind of sculpting a personality that wasn't just blurred or black nerd, but also soft boy. He was into Hasbro's Gem, and helped people edit their own like film and animated versions of the Gem lore on Instagram, on all different social media, and that this was one of his ins. But another kind of piece of this is like he expressed to me that he wanted to grow his very kinky, what do you call it, nappy afro hair out and straighten it so he could have bangs, right? We already talked about him wearing makeup. He also wanted to, preach to me the virtue of every other kind of woman but me, right? Asian women, white women, people who are trans are preferred to me, but yet somehow I'm supposed to be on the scene to help him with housing, a place to stay, some kind of tether to, the normal muggle world, shall we say. And I was supposed to be like, ooh, pick me. And I, once I saw the tube of, no frills family planning gel that, he left in my daybed at one point over the years, I was puzzled and horrified. What is that? Where did you get that? Ew. I wasn't interested in having sex with him, and that was cool. Like, we were friends. But, the wastefulness with money on clothes, the wastefulness with all these great job opportunities, and to kind of F around and get involved in all this, like, alcohol and drug scene and drug use and short straw and everything else, this crowd, right? He was not only soft boy, but wanting to be kind of like a homosexual.